Thank you. Yeah, give you a hand. Yes, Yvonne and Christian, also welcome on stage from my side. I'm really excited to have you two here on this panel, two very successful founders who are pushing digital transformation in the energy sector with two very different business cases. So before we jump into our discussion, I would like you both to shortly introduce yourself, or as this is a startup talk, just pitch your idea to the audience. Yvonne, will you start and tell us more about ATHION's solutions for analyzing and optimizing the energy systems of energy suppliers and industrial companies?
Okay. I'm welcome. Thank you for the introduction, Jenny. So what is ATHION doing? So basically, we are trying to disrupt the ways that industrial companies and utilities consume and generate their energy. So in order to understand what we're doing, I have to give a very short introduction on how generation and consumption in such an area is working. So if you think about a large production plant, for instance, there you have, of course, many power consumers, like the large machinery, which is producing the products. And you also have generation of energy. This can be all kind of energy, for instance, power with combined heat and power production, but you also have gas boilers, you have cooling system, you have pressured air, and all kind of large, very large assets, which nowadays are basically managed in a very, very traditional way in terms of IT and software. So you have very traditional control software and hardware on the shop floor, which is doing the whole management of these systems, and which is far away from being intelligent or connected to other systems or connected to any markets or everything. So this is the one side, the generation side, and on the consumption side, you have the assets who are producing the products, and nowadays they are mostly managed by demand and by production planning. But of course, power efficiency, energy efficiency is getting more and more important also for these large companies. So the companies are required to really introduce some kind of energy management and energy efficiency into their system, but this is also done in a very manual way. So we have these energy managers who are using a lot of Excel and a lot of thinking to really introduce measures and to do something about the energy consumption. So this is where we come in order to digitalize all of this stuff, in order to make it much more efficient and much more powerful for the energy manager and the generation of energy to be very flexible, to be very efficient, and to be very smart. So what we do is we introduce a software as a service solution, which is based on AI and mathematical optimization, and which is able to really get insights from the data. So we get all the data from the site, which can be a lot of data, thousands of data points, thousands of data series that we are getting into our system, and we do a lot of AI on this, so we really get insights in what is going on there in the plant and the energy systems. Are there anomalies? We are forecasting the whole data. We are forecasting the consumption, so we know a lot about the energy system itself, and this in itself is very valuable for the customer because he can better control and steer and understand his energy system based on our analysis. But we're not stopping there. But we go further and we really optimize the energy generation based on this information. So what we do is we provide the customer with intelligent timetables, with control plans for every and each asset in his plant. It might be generation assets, but also large consumption assets like large machines. And based on this timetable, the energy can be produced and consumed much more efficient at better times, where the energy is cheaper, where there are no grid tariffs on the energy consumption, and all of this. So you can imagine it a little bit like the smart home, you know, from your household maybe, where you steer the whole system with a small computer. It's more or less the same, but in a much larger scale, because you have, of course, all the constraints from the production, from the technical assets that you need to consider. And this is what we're doing. So we're using a lot of high tech there and trying to bring this really to the industry, to this very traditional industry, and to disrupt the whole way that they're working right now.
Thank you. So Christian, you're also offering very innovative solution. You're also using a lot of data, and helping saving power at home, but also creating new values for smart meters. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, if you listen to Frank Mastur from Energie Baden-Württemberg, he referred to the elephant in the room that most people don't see. So in a sense, we are that elephant. So we are creating the best energy app in the world that gives you full transparency about your energy consumption. So at any time you know how much you're consuming, and you're only paying for what you actually consumed in that very month. So 87% of Germans hate additional payments at the end of the year, Nachzahlungen. And with Fresh Energy, you never have to do any additional payment at the end of the year, because you're actually month over month only paying what you're consuming. Plus, you get full transparency. What does that mean? We even tell you your refrigerator consumes, let's say, 23 euros per month. So who of you thinks 23 euros is a lot? And who of you thinks it's not so much per month for a refrigerator? And be honest, who of you doesn't have a clue about if that's a lot or not? Well, thank you very much. So how would you know? Like, there's no way today, even people, like, if I ask people in the energy industry, they also don't know. I mean, how would you know, right? There's no technology that tells you that. And quite frankly, many people also don't really care so much. But if you have the energy app from Fresh Energy, you actually start caring, because it's really interesting, and we empower the people, right? And then on top, we give lots of additional values. For example, in elderly care, we can buy the way that Grandma Annie consumes her power. In the morning, she switches on the light, and then she makes a coffee, and for lunch a soup, and in the evening a tea. So we can see that pattern, and if she agrees with the highest security and highest data privacy, we can have a very simple elderly care product, so that the relatives get a message on their smartphone or an SMS saying, hey, maybe you want to call your mom because it's 9 o'clock and usually she wakes up at 7 and it seems something is wrong. And that's a super simple use case that can change the healthcare industry. And that's what we're doing. So we're working with large utilities like EnBW, not yet with them, but like them. And that's what we're doing with Fresh Energy.
Thank you. Very interesting. Two very different business cases. And yeah, Yvonne, you said before that your goal is it to support industrial companies, big energy suppliers, to digitalize their energy system, to optimize them. So what do you think, where are we right now in Germany regarding digital transformation in the energy sector?
Yeah, very good question. I think it depends. It's not the same for all companies. We see a lot of change in this area. I think around 10 years ago, when I was talking in my previous job, when I was talking to customers about digital and cloud, and they were like, oh my God, cloud, oh no. So this changed completely. Most companies already have some sort of applications in the cloud. They see that this is much more efficient, more cost efficient, much faster, and even safer, because you cannot really build up your own high security data center, typically, at least not as a small or medium-sized company. And even for the larger ones, it's pretty problematic. So I see that they really changing their mind regarding external services, about the cloud, about digital services in general, and I think this is very good. However, we are still, the closer that we're getting to the shop floor, and we are very, very close to the shop floor with our products, the more problematic it is to convince the customer to change the ways this is working since around 80 years or something. So we have all this control software, which is from the 80s, more or less. I don't want to say anything bad about Siemens and what they're doing, but this is the same technology, more or less, that we are using since the 80s. And this is not really digital. Of course, it's digital in a way, but it's not what we understand from being digital, which is really connected to the world, connection of many, many systems using powerful algorithms, using real-time information to do something. And this is something that these systems typically cannot provide. And it's pretty hard to convince the people who are working with these systems since years and years and years to change their way of working, to really embrace new powerful tools that makes life easier, but at first look more complex. So I think it's really different to what you guys are doing, because it's really, I think, easy to understand for a consumer. Just I get an app and I have some information, and this is something that I can embrace and say, cool. But for this complex systems deep down in the shop floor, we have to do a lot of work to really convince the people to use it. But it's changing. It's changing. It's Industry 4.0 is coming, and everybody knows it. So I think it's going slowly, but it's going forward.
Okay. So, Christian, you also work together with big energy suppliers, with big companies. You just, a couple of days ago, you announced a new cooperation with EWE. So do you have the same, that sometimes it's hard to convince big energy suppliers to work together with you, to use your solution, to work with a startup, or is that easy?
Absolutely. And you have to be prepared for long sales cycles. And my first startup was in the logistics industry. And people say that the logistics people are the most boring and most slow people in the world. Well, afterwards, I worked in the real estate sector. So I started Kiwi, a keyless access for house doors, a clear use case, but also very long sales cycles. And so I was prepared, like entering the energy industry wouldn't be much easier. But I must say, if you have a solution that really convinces the company, no matter which industry, you can get the foot in the door quickly, and then they're going to do a pilot with you, and if you perform well, then you're going to get signatures on the big contracts as well. And with Fresh Energy, we now signed deals with utilities in Germany, totaling 7% of the German market. So 7% of all households are potentially already living in a place where they can use Fresh Energy services. It'll come over time, and we will grow more even so. And it is possible to cooperate.
Yeah, okay. So Yvonne, you not only cooperate with big companies, almost exactly 1 year ago you got acquired by Digital Energy Solutions, a joint venture of BMW Group and Viessmann Group. So what I was wondering, what has changed since then for you?
Yeah, also very interesting question. So not too much, to be honest, because we're still very independent. However, of course, in terms of startup culture, such acquisition always changes things. And we experienced that it's quite a difference to be a small company of maybe 10, 20 people, or to belong to a larger company of around 100 people, which also belongs to a very large company like BMW. So there are many differences in cultures, and it's not maybe not the very large, obvious stuff, it's more in the small stuff. For instance, we're using Slack for collaboration, and it's very fast, it's very efficient, we work with it all the time. But this is something that our joint venture partner doesn't do. They're using emails, and for us it's completely different way of working, and I wouldn't have thought that it makes such a difference, these small things. Or for instance, the organization. So we're not used to any hierarchies, we're working in teams, #new work, very, very good concept, I love it. And it's very efficient, and I think it's what made us successful, because it's very fast way of collaboration, very fast way of building stuff, of deciding stuff, of really using people's potential there where it is. But this is very hard to understand for our larger partners, because they're not used to this, and they're always looking for the manager or the decision head of this or that, and this is not how we work. So it's really hard to bring these cultures together, but my experience is that it's really worth it to fight for your culture. And startup culture, this is not just playing ping pong all the time. Startup culture is really a way of working, a way of new work, and I think the old concept that most of the large companies are using are really from the Industrial Revolution. I mean, this is where was the time where there were a few people who could read and write and who were the smart ones, and a lot of people who could not even read, and they need to be told what to do. So this is where this hierarchy thing is coming from, to be honest. It's 100 or more years old. But nowadays we're living in the digital revolution. All the people are very smart, they're highly educated, they can and they want to make their own decisions. So why not let them? And this is a very new concept, and I think the startups are really embracing this. And I think the startups should really bring it out to the open, and when they acquire it, they should get their acquisition partner to know this concept and to embrace it as well. And to put it very bold, I think we, the startups, have some sort of social obligation to bring these culture to the larger companies, especially in Germany, where it is not so embraced as in the US, for instance, to really bring this forward and make a change in the way we work.
And how long did it take you to close this acquisition deal, or how did you do that? I mean, it's something many startups aim for.
You should plan some time if you're trying to do this. It took us more than a year. I think half a year of just talking and getting to know each other, then maybe half a year of due diligence, and another half a year of contracts and negotiating and all this small stuff, so it really takes some time.
Okay, I can imagine. So, Christian, to become a Fresh Energy customer and to use your services and your app, I need to have a smart meter, right? And I know that we have been talking about the smart meter rollout in Germany for over 10 years now. So how come I still don't have a smart meter at home?
Yeah, in countries like Italy, they're already rolling out the second generation of smart meters. And in Germany, we tend to talk about things a lot and try to make it really hyper secure, which is also very important. So I understand both sides. How come you don't have one at home? Because
I'm not a
you didn't sign up with Fresh Energy yet. And anyone could, if they like, right now sign up with Fresh Energy. However, this is not our main goal to grow as a utility. Our goal is to work with like EWE, who have more than 1 million users, more than 1 million customers, and they roll out the smart meters because they're much better at rolling out smart meters than we would ever be. So it'll come over time. I said 7% are already in the area where they can get this service. Anyone could get the service directly from us, but that's not what we actually aim for. And why Germany is so slow in rolling out the smart meter in general, that's like there's lots of facets to this story, and I say it's coming now. However, those smart meters that are being rolled out with the BSI certificate, they cannot, at the moment, they are not allowed to send the granularity data that we need to do our services. So actually, you're going to get one, you pay a lot of money for it, but you don't have any value.
Okay.
That's a bad thing, but we are working on changing that, actually. And most of the German population, 80%, they are consuming less than 6,000 kilowatt hours per year, so they're consuming so little energy that they're not even eligible to getting this so-called smart meter. So they are getting, you know, like you have a black box at home, that there's a wheel that counts your energy. It's the Ferraris counter, the Ferraris meter. And they're changing that to white box with a digital interface, but there's no connection whatsoever. So it's still it's not a smart meter. But we're working on a dongle or like some add-on that you can attach to it, and then you get the data out of the smart meter, and you can do the great stuff that we are offering.
Okay.
So it will come.
Okay.
I'm confident.
So imagining there would be a smart meter rollout nationwide to every household, also small households, and it would be smart enough. So what do you think, what would change? What impact would that have?
So an impact on the pocket, because what we see with our existing customers, we have a couple thousand customers right now, and they're changing the way they're consuming energy, and they're saving without doing anything actually, like without doing much. They're saving 10% of their energy. And we've just started. We're going to introduce some new measures, some new tips and tricks how you can save even more. But if you think about 10% less energy consumption for all of Germany, that's an equivalent to a large coal power plant that produces 9 million tons of CO2, which is an equivalent to more than 3 million cars every year. Like, think about it. If you would roll it out, you could save the Earth a little better than right now. So, big impact.
Okay. So yeah, in that part also, of course, also flexibility is a very important topic, flexibility in the distribution grids. And yeah, because if you want to integrate a larger share of variable renewable energy sources like solar and wind, we need to have flexible grid. So how do your solutions contribute to yeah, create more flexibility in the distribution grid, Yvonne?
So the distribution grid is, of course, one part of the overall problem. So we see that this part is maybe getting more complicated within the years or the years to come, especially because we have, or we expect a lot of e-mobility and electric charging in the grid, and more decentral generation from PV or small household plants or whatsoever. So we see that the distribution grid especially is quite under pressure. So what can we do to make that easier? I think that the most logical thing would be to flexibly manage the consumers and the generation assets, and of course the storage assets that are there, and to manage them in a way that is really beneficial for the grid. So if there's too much consumption, of course we reduce consumption, and if it's not enough, then we increase consumption. Pretty obvious, pretty easy so far. So what we can do, basically we can do this immediately, because we have all the tools for this. We have forecasts based on AI, which can forecast basically everything, the power generation, the power consumption of households, of plants, of electric vehicles. We can basically forecast everything. So we have quite a clear understanding of the future of the next hours or even next days. And we can use this information to optimize the consumption and generation of the assets that we have under control. And in a very real-time manner, so we can change this immediately if there are any, I don't know, disruptions or any changes in the way that, or any ways that it's different from our forecast. So we can react immediately with our optimization and control assets. So we have all the tools. We can do this for one plant, or for one household, or for one car, but we can do it also, and this is the more interesting part, for a large amount of these, for many plants, many cars, thousands of electric vehicles, for instance. And this is, I think this is where we need to go to really, yeah, let me say, build it the other way around, and go from decentralization back a little bit into centralization, which is very interesting. If you look how the whole industry has changed to decentral, and now you really need to combine all of this again and to make central decisions on how to distribute the energy consumption generation in a way that it's beneficial for instance, the power grid. However, we have all the tools. We could do this immediately. We already do projects together with power grid providers to do this, to manage our assets, plants, electric vehicles according to the grid situation. The only thing that is missing right now is the market behind it. These are pilots, and from a technical point of view, we could put it into practice immediately, but we don't have the market models in place for the distribution grid, which allows us to really get money out of this. Because of the unbundling, we are not able to provide a generation generation asset or the power grid, distribution grid provider cannot pay us for using a generation asset. There's just no market model. But this is something that is under discussion since years and years, and we would really wish that regulation would be a little bit faster here. It's a little similar to the smart meter rollout thing, and to provide us with a regulation which is really helping, or which is opening markets so that we can provide these services, because the technology is there, and it's a win-win-win situation for the customer, for us, for the power grid. So we're really looking forward that this is changing so that we can start with it.
Yeah. So Christian, what about you? Like, how does your solution help creating more flexibility in the grid?
25% of Germany's power consumption comes from households, and right now, people that manage flexibility, that manage the grids, have no idea when people are consuming what kind of energy. And it's called the standard load profile. So every one of us has the same expected load profile, how we are using our energy. That doesn't make any sense because we're all different. So with fresh energy and the underlying technology that then will be used by all the utilities, we can have a clear understanding about the demand side. On the production side, people know already very well about when we are producing, when we are expecting that the sun is shining, that more wind is coming, etc. But on the demand side, in industry, you already have solutions that can and models that predict, and with the help of ATHION, that's getting better. But on the household side, we are completely blind. Not only us as the people using the power, but also the grid. And that can be totally changed with massive value for utilities and grid operators, and in terms of flexibility.
Okay, so like in my position at Bitkom, I'm in touch with a lot of interesting tech startups like you two. So I'm always very interested also in finding out more about their funding story. So as we only have 5 minutes left, I would like ask you both about how you actually come up with your idea. I mean, two really different ideas, and I don't think it's something I have thought about creating such a solution. So was there some situation or something where you actually thought, oh, okay, that's what I'm going to do? Yvonne?
Yeah. So our founding story is not so straightforward, actually. It's not the typical one. I was working in another startup, and we were doing some power grid support for the TSOs, for the large distribution grids. And I was there for 2 weeks, and then we found out that the whole business model wasn't working. So this happens from time to time in startups. So this was quite a disappointment, and the whole company more or less went down. But the three of us thought, okay, that can't be it. I mean, we're smart people. We can come up with something else. We just didn't want to stop, because we just started, and we thought, okay, come on. It was not our startup, we were just working there, but we thought, okay, let's do something about it. So we just sat together, took a whiteboard, and really thought about, okay, what do we need for the energy disruption? And we were, of course, thinking in more industrial terms, because we started there. But we really, on a flip chart, we started sketching ideas what would be needed to really make this work. What does the energy consumption, what does the energy sector need from the industry? What can we do? And this is how we came up with some beers and a flip chart with our idea. We pitched this to the old investors, and they thought it was great, and they just gave us the money. That was basically the story of the first funding.
Okay, so just right in the beginning, with only an idea, you got the investor already on board?
Exactly. It were the old investors of the old companies, so they were a little bit, anyway, disappointed too that the whole thing didn't work out, so they were already there. We pitched the idea and they said, okay, come on, there's no waste time, let's just start over again. So this was more like rebuild and very fast and very quick. And afterwards it was more like the typical startup story where we looked for new founding rounds and so on. So afterwards it went pretty straightforward, how you would expect it. But the founding was, I think, rather untypical.
Okay. So what about your story? I mean, Fresh Energy is already your third successful startup. So how did you come up with that idea?
I didn't come up with the idea. The idea, it's much better than that. The idea came within the organization that will actually use Fresh Energy. So Innogy developed the idea within the Energy Innovation Hub. And my co-founder, Daniel von Gärtner, he was driving it for about a year. And the logic why Innogy did that is basically like Höttges and Mastieu were talking about, you need to find someone who's disrupting yourself. Right? And this is what Innogy was and is still is still doing. And so they drove it forward, and then they asked me if I want to join. So I was on the digital transformation board of RWE and then Innogy at that time, and I thought it's a great idea because that's actually something useful. It'd be empowering people to do the right thing and to save energy is good, especially if everyone can save some money. Right?
Yeah, that's true. But as you have founded Kiwi and Curzon Global Security before, so do you have any advice you want to share for other founders?
Yeah. I'm also now a venture partner with ID Invest Partners, which is the largest venture capital firm in continental Europe. And I see a lot of founders that approach me and say, hey, I have a great idea, but I can't tell you about it. And I always think, okay, good luck then. So a lot of people, they say, I won't tell anyone because it's such a great idea. If you would know, you would immediately do it. And I think that's probably not the right mindset to be successful, because I always try to talk to everyone about the ideas. Most often they're not my ideas, so, but still it's the good thing to get feedback, and only then you can learn and improve your story and your business.
Okay, so talking about it.
Share it, don't be afraid. There's a risk that someone does it, but if they do it and they do it better, then they're better. So let them go and do it, right? But you need to be confident that you can execute your idea better than anyone else.
Okay, so talking about it, especially on stage, probably would be good advice.
On stage, or like one-on-one meetings, all the time.
Okay, well, we are at the end of our panel right now. Thank you very, very much. If anyone has questions, Yvonne and Christian will be at the meet and speaker area just over there, just outside of the stage. So yes, thank you very much for sharing your opinion, for sharing your experience, for your advices. I think it was really interesting, and I'm really curious to see how the digital transformation will continue in the energy sector, and I'm very sure that innovative startups like you two will play a very important role in that. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Thank you, Jen.